Yeah, he's going to try with the microphone. Let me see how far the microphone reaches. Yeah, I wish these people could. I thought of that. Okay. Okay, everybody, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Matt Kouri. Matt is the CEO of Mission Capital in Austin, Texas, and he's going to explain a little bit about his background. So without further ado, here's Matt.
Over that way. All right. Thanks, Laura. I'm really honored and blessed to get to be here. First time to Chattanooga. Looks like a beautiful community. Unfortunately, I have to fly back tonight, but this is just a blessing to me to get to be here. It's been a rough week at home. Can I just ask, how many of you did school started this week already here in Chattanooga, right? It was the start of school at home. Anybody have a new kindergartner? Okay, only one, just the two of us? Anybody else have it? Okay, new kindergarten, first grader. All right, how about a middle school? Anybody put anybody in middle school this week? My goodness, guys. So I had both this week in my family. My wife and I, just a little bit about me, and then we'll jump into some content. But I'm very blessed to get to be married to an amazing woman. She is also the CEO of a nonprofit organization. We're two nonprofit struggling executive directors in Austin. We're fortunate to have 3 kids. I'll show you a picture here. I've worked across all sectors of our economy, in government, in business mostly, and in the last 9 years in the nonprofit sector, kind of a tri-sector person, if you will. But at my heart, I love kids, and I'm a family guy, so it was rough. So it's nice to be here. This is refreshing. I cried a lot this week. My kids are here. I don't know if you can see them. This is my son, West. He's the new middle schooler. My son, Creed, is in 4th grade, and my daughter, Naya, just started kindergarten. And already, after 2 days of school, everything changed, right? Everything changed. My middle schooler, middle school sucks. I mean, you remember it and I think it sucks worse for mom and dad than it does for him, because he seemed to be okay, but we were a wreck. You know, he's kind of a distracted kid. He's got some challenges with learning and stuff. We bought him a brand new iPad. He's got dyslexia and dysgraphia, and so brand new iPad with a keyboard. Got him all set up. Second day, Dad, I lost the iPad. Oh, gee. So, we're working on that. My 4th grader, girls are gross, until like yesterday. All of a sudden, he's discovered that maybe they're cute, and I think they like me, and maybe I like them. So I'm dealing with that. And then my sweet, precious, innocent little kindergartner, she's learned some new words. In the first 2 days of school that I just, we dropped her off for the first day, but she wanted to ride the bus, and so she got off the bus, and we stood there, waiting to hear how it was, and she walks off literally holding her nose, and she said, "Mom and Dad, this bus is funky." Like, where do you know that word? Apparently the air conditioner broke on the bus, and so it smelled like elementary school boy feet, or something. And so, anyways, it's been a challenge. I've cried a lot this week, so it's really refreshing here to be amongst friends, new friends and peers. I've got a great chance to meet many of you. Thank you, Marco, for the introduction to Laura and her team. And so I'm going to talk today about mission-driven social innovation, and I'm thrilled. I thought maybe, I didn't know a lot about Chattanooga. I thought maybe I might have to introduce a lot of new concepts to you. It sounds like some of our Ignite session folks are already there. I'm thrilled with that. I want to be able to go a little bit deeper and maybe share some experiences from a community, Austin, that maybe is just 2 or 3 steps ahead of where Chattanooga might be. We're a little bigger. We've got a lot of the same challenges, I'm learning, but we've had some really great success. I think we're an emerging social innovation hub in our country, in our world, and so I want to give you some reflections from outside of this community. But my entire talk today is going to be based on one premise, that if I don't do anything else today, I would hope that you leave here with this new understanding and really this new belief, to take LaQuisha, this is the why that we all do what we do. And it's the belief that in my opinion, I'm a student of history, I'm a student of economics, and I believe we're living in unique times. Maybe we're not quite there yet, but we're on the cusp of being in a place where never before has our sector been more wonderfully poised to actually solve our social and community problems. Like, so think about for a minute, what would it mean to actually solve a problem rather than just make it a little bit better? Right? What does transformational change mean in contrast to incremental change? Right? And so I want to start with just an exercise to have you think about this, to give you some personal context for it. If there was one problem in your community, whether it's here, wherever it is, whatever community means to you, your neighborhood, your school district, Chattanooga, the state, the country, whatever it might be, what problem, what challenge, social, economic, regional, environmental, whatever it might be, what challenge would you choose tomorrow, if you could solve it, to solve? Would it be eradicating cancer? Would it be transforming the education system in this community? I could tell you, for me, my wife and I, if you couldn't tell, we're proud adoptive parents 3 times. My boys are from Siberia, and my daughter's from Ethiopia. And in our spare time, and actually in her full time, we work on the issue of foster care and adoption. It's something that we're passionate about. So for us, it would be that we would wake up tomorrow in Austin, Texas, where there are 2,000 children at any given time languishing in a broken foster care system. Over the last few months, it's been so bad. We've had between 15 and 25 kids sleeping in cots in the offices of state child protective services, social workers, because there aren't places for those kids to go. I mean, can you imagine being ripped out of your home and instead of going to a foster family, which might be hard enough, you're sleeping in an office? You know, that would be our choice. We've gotten to work with so many amazing families. These are friends of ours that are our inspiration. Can you tell which one or ones are adopted there? It's a cool family. They fostered 17 kids over the last 2 years. They've adopted 7, and they're out to solve the problem, I think, just themselves with their family, right? And so when we think about solving at scale, it would say, it's not just about one placement or fixing the problem in this neighborhood. We want to transform. We want to make Austin a place where no kid, right, goes to an office to sleep at night, where no kid has to get shipped 100 miles, up the road to College Station to a foster family because there wasn't a foster family waiting and ready with an open bed in Austin, Texas. That's what we're working on. But what would it be for you? So I want you to take just 2 minutes and think about it and just turn to somebody else. I'm going to have you sort of hold somebody else accountable here and share what would be the problem that you would solve in your community. All right, take 2 minutes and just share that with one of your neighbors. Okay, if you haven't switched, let the other person talk. I'll do it. Thanks. Okay, I hate to break up your dreaming here, but I'd love to hear from one or two of you what problem you might choose to solve. So if we can bring it back together, maybe we should just let it go. We could just keep talking about this all day. All right, so if you could raise your hand, I'd love to hear maybe one or two of your examples of a problem you'd like to see solved. You can be my inspiration for today. Somebody raise your hand. Let me hear a few of them. What are you excited about? What are you passionate about? What would you like to solve? And you could tell on your neighbor, too, if you're too scared to share your vision. Yes, ma'am. Domestic violence. Yeah. I love that. My mom works in a domestic violence shelter up in Oklahoma. Yeah. Anybody? Who else? Yes. Good. Right. Great. So no elderly person in your community goes without the resources they need. That's a solving at scale. That's great. Yes, ma'am. That's great. Right. No one for every reason goes without the medical care they need. That's great. Anybody else? Anybody over here? No dreamers over here? Come on. Yeah. You're going to adopt hers? Okay, good. Right, okay, gun violence. That's great. Well, that's wonderful. I love to hear that. I could have just listened to you all talking all day. I think we have to dream that big, right? I am a dreamer. I'm a realist at some level too, right? I know that many of our problems are so complex and so entrenched that we probably won't actually forever solve them. But my goodness, if we're not aiming at that goal, then why are we in this business? Right? My mom had a magnet on her fridge when I was growing up that said, and you probably had this too. She said, aim for the moon, because even if you miss, you'll be amongst the stars. Right? So, are we doing? What's your moonshot in this community? I'm a person of faith, and so I know that Scripture says that we will always have the poor with us. Right? There are certain things that maybe we will always have poverty at some level, but we have to, I think, strive. Because we're in this weird business as nonprofit professionals and as folks involved in the social sector. We're in this strange business of think about it. Like, if you really boil it down, we take other people's money to insert ourselves into other people's lives. It's kind of weird. Like, we probably should get that right. We probably should aim for greatness at scale. And I think, again, never before has our sector been more poised to actually see that happening. And I'm going to show you some examples today of where it has happened in Austin and where we see it happening in other places. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why. So what gives me the boldness to think that now might be different than other times in our history? I think it's these three sort of overarching ingredients. We're seeing incredible new forms of human capital being infused into the social sector. Us non-profiteers, we're not alone anymore. There are more and more millennials who are graduating from college who want to work for nonprofits, not as a second best, but as a first choice. Or they want to work for a for-profit, but they want to transform that company into a community-engaged company. We have retired people or close to retired people who are saying, forget about retirement. I want to start a nonprofit organization or engage in the community in a new way. I get calls all week. I get calls every week from someone like me who came from a company, most of their career in business, and they're just tired of that, and they say, I want to work in the social sector in some form or fashion. How did you make that transition? How do you do that? New forms of human capital. We have new amounts and types of financial capital. I'm going to go into this. I'm going to be a little bit of a money wonk here today because I know in our sector cash is king, right? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But guys, this is going to be transformational to how we fuel our work in this sector. And then new categories of social capital. And what I mean by that is how do we organize ourselves within organizations and outside of our organizations to tackle some of the most complex problems. So new business models, you've heard about this concept of social entrepreneurship, and so we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about collective impact, this idea of organizing at scale in new ways. So these are just, three overarching themes that you'll hear me talk about. And so what do you think we call it in Austin, Texas, when mission-driven human capital and financial capital and social capital, maybe political capital, intellectual capital, all come together to solve problems at scale? Anybody have an idea what we call that? We call it a miracle. Amen. Amen. We call it mission capital, which is the name of my organization. We spent a lot of time. We used to have another name that was kind of boring, and about a year and a half ago, we rebranded as Mission Capital. We believe mission capital is where all those things come together to change the world. What's your example of mission capital in this community? So a little bit about my organization. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We're about 16 years old. I've been the executive director, CEO now for almost 10 years. But we're a social enterprise, and we have been from the beginning. Our vision is to see big problems in our community get solved, clean and simple. That's what we're aiming for. And our mission is to catalyze and multiply the impact of mission-driven people and organizations. We multiply the impact of mission-driven people and organizations. We're a force-multiplying organization. We don't deliver direct services. We're not a funder. We sit in that middle space, and we earn about 50% of our total $2.5 to $3 million budget every year. And I'll tell you about some of the services that we provide to nonprofits, to philanthropists, to foundations, and others that help us have a sustainable business model that's partly reliant on philanthropy. We have fundraisers. I have a 3-person development team, and I have a bunch of revenue generators in the organization as well. And so our theory of change, what we believe, is that if this is our vision, big problems actually get solved, that we have to have strong mission-driven leaders and organizations. We have a great leadership development team that offers workshops and training and cohort-based leadership development in a really intensive way. We went out and got the best and brightest leadership development, org development person in town and hired her to help transform that. We also have a robust management consulting practice, a nonprofit, low-fee management consulting practice. We get hired by nonprofit organizations to work with their strategy, their board, their business models, their leadership transitions, all the things that help make for strong leaders and strong organizations. We also believe that social innovation is key to the mix, and I'll show some examples of some of the things that we do. We fundamentally understand that as much as we are and love nonprofits and how we have traditionally done business, that if this is our goal, right, we can no longer rely exclusively on traditional nonprofit practices and traditional philanthropy to shoulder the entire burden of community problem solving. We have to take advantage of the new forms of human, financial, and social capital that want to be infused into our sector to actually solve problems. So that's where we focus on innovation. And then we also believe that at a high level, in systems change, that some of our problems are so complex and so interwoven that they require systems thinking and an ecosystem approach. And I'll show you some pictures of what we think that means to solving social problems. So those are our beliefs. What do? We cast a vision. I give a lot of talks like this, asking people, what problem would you solve? And why aren't you out doing it? And sharing examples of where it's been done before. So we're vision casters, we're consultants and strategic advisors, as I talked about. We have networks that we build. We're the nonprofit membership association in Central Texas. 600 nonprofit organizations join us. We have a philanthropist group called Social Venture Partners that I'll talk to you a little bit about. We develop leaders, as I said, and then we believe in innovation and being a change catalyst. So we run an accelerator, one of the first in its country, of its kind in the country, nonprofit social enterprise accelerators. We're in our 3rd year, and it's doing amazing things at helping transform some organizations that I'll tell you about. So we're working really at 3 levels. We believe in building the broad infrastructure of the Central Texas or Austin social impact ecosystem. We want our community to be a vibrant social impact hub, a social innovation capital in our state and in our country. We also work at this sort of mid-level of targeted issue areas. We've picked a few areas where we think we can have a deep, longitudinal impact as a catalyst, as a convener, as a backbone. Foster care. By the way, when you get to be the CEO, you get to pick some of the things that your organization works on. I happen to be passionate about foster care and adoption. We're going deep there. We're going deep in chronic homelessness. We're going deep in poverty and some other neat areas. And then certainly we have to have the component parts strong. We work at the micro level. Individual organizations, individual leaders who form the foundation of a healthy social impact ecosystem. So that's our high-level model. We have a pretty complicated in Austin, and your map probably looks something like this: social impact ecosystem, right? And notice that about 6,000 nonprofit. We actually have more in Austin. Austin's really nonprofit happy. We have about 6,000. There are more nonprofits per capita in the greater Austin area than in any other community in the southwestern United States, and we're one of the top communities nationally. So we are all about starting nonprofits in Austin, which you could argue, there's some diminishing returns to scale at that, but we have a lot of nonprofit organizations, right? But the social impact ecosystem goes beyond that. Certainly, larger and smaller foundations, whether it's corporate foundations or private foundations. We're fortunate that Michael Dell, if anyone's ever owned a Dell computer, chose to build his computers in Round Rock, Texas, and made a ton of money and is giving a lot of it away. And so he's been a great catalyst, he and that foundation. But beyond that, we know that government and quasi-government organizations have to be part of the solution. In some communities that works well, in some communities it doesn't. In Austin it actually works pretty well. We've got a pretty active, progressive county and city government that want to engage in innovative ways with the sector, not just give money away. And so we've been able to loop them in. We have sort of some niche organizations that are working on integrating across the sector. Our business community is fascinating. I'll share some thoughts with you. The way business is getting done in communities like Austin, maybe it's happening in Chattanooga. I heard a good example here earlier from one of you, is fundamentally transforming. And we got all kinds of innovation and disruption happening in the social space. Mission Capital, we see ourselves as sort of a hub, a connector, a catalyst, a researcher, an advisor to this ecosystem, and we want it to be even stronger. So here's one example of where I would say Austin has actually solved a community problem. We have a lot of military bases kind of around the Austin region, and we found ourselves with a huge chronic homelessness problem amongst veterans. Right, lots and lots of veteran homelessness. Lots of homelessness, period. Austin's a warm climate, probably similar to what we really don't have a winter. And so we attract a lot of folks who choose, for whatever reasons, to call the streets their home. And all the problems that can come with that. And some of our leaders, business, government, and nonprofit, came together and said, we may not be able to, in the short term, solve homelessness, but where can we start to pick it apart? And they chose veteran homelessness. Our mayor got the key leaders of nonprofit organizations, some key subsector business leaders and government leaders, and locked them in a room one day and said, we're going to fix this. You can't leave until we figure it out. And they did. Right, and we got to play a small part in that. 682 since 2015, 682 veterans that were homeless now have homes in our community, and we've been officially designated by HUD, the feds, as having reached what's called functional zero. Right? We will never probably go forever without a veteran being homeless, but what they put in place is they didn't just find apartment complexes in the private sector who were willing to take veteran homeless folks with vouchers and other sort of creative funding models, but they also built an infrastructure in the community that's cross-sectoral, whereby any newly identified homeless vet will find a home within 90 days. That's what functional zero means. Right? You got them all there, and you've got an infrastructure in place that actually works. This wasn't mostly publicly funded. There were some government dollars, but they had to go out and find philanthropy to do some creative risk-taking, to put up some risk capital, right, to entice the private sector, those who owned the places where these vets would end up living, to take some risk. And so the private sector and philanthropy took on that role in the funding model, and so we've solved it, right? So what's next? They're working on youth homelessness next. That's an example, and this is Charlie. So he was one of the ones who found a home. So we're excited to see this kind of problem solving at scale. So 3 things. What are the trends that we're seeing and that I think you're starting to see, and we'll see even more that make this a unique point in our history? First is the blurring of sectors and business models. You've heard a little bit about that today. I'm going to go a little deeper into it. The second is we are just seeing in our country and certainly in our community, and from what I've learned a little bit about Chattanooga, there's a lot of this as well. Mission-driven wealth, right? There's mission-driven wealth. Individuals, companies, foundations who have enough and want to use more and more of it to make a difference in the community. Maybe not in the traditional senses that we think, but significant mission-driven wealth. And then the emergence of a lot of new financing vehicles and business models for that. So I'm going to talk in turn about each of those 3 things here over the next few minutes, and then we'll have some time as well for some questions. So let's talk about blurring of business models. You've seen, in fact, I think Laura sent out a picture that looks like this. There's lots of examples of, if you were to plot all of the non-governmental organizations in a community along this continuum from sort of pure profit, right, companies that all they're interested in is profit, all the way over to a pure charity. So over here you might put, I don't know, what's a traditionally pure, a tobacco company someone might put over here, right? Nothing against tobacco company. I'm just saying that maybe purely interested in profit, maybe. And then over here, a pure charity. Call it a domestic violence shelter or a homeless shelter, right? Purely reliant, always likely going to be reliant on philanthropy to do their work. It used to be that it was a pretty clear cut. When I went to business school, there really wasn't any talk about this stuff. And I'm not that old. Business school wasn't that long ago for me, right? But the emergence of not just, it started with corporate social responsibility, and it's moved into socially conscious and engaged companies. Austin's the home of Whole Foods. Do you have a Whole Foods here in Chattanooga, right? They really pioneered a lot of that. John Mackey and his work on conscious capitalism, the CEO of Whole Foods, has sort of, I think, enlightened the business sector to think about how do we do profit and purpose at the same time. And then you really get into some of the things that Marco and others talk about, for-profit social ventures. So they're on this side of the IRS designation line, which is what we traditionally use, right? They're on the business side, but then social enterprises. And someone said earlier, there's not a good definition. I agree. I'm not going to try to define what social enterprise, social venture is, but it's essentially organizations that exist solely for a social purpose, to solve a community, a health, an educational, and environmental problem. Right? That might be a for-profit business, and they might be a nonprofit that earns revenue or accesses funding in ways other than philanthropy, and then traditional nonprofits that are mostly reliant on philanthropy. So where would you plot the organization you work for right now? Would you be able to pretty easily put it somewhere on this continuum? So that's where it is now. Think about where it is now. And as you're going through these next few slides and my talk, think about where do you want it to be? going forward, right? Is there a movement to the right or to the left here? Or does your nonprofit need to develop a subsidiary for-profit social venture to help achieve your mission? That's something that we're seeing a lot more of, and we actually help folks do at Mission Capital. So, well, I'm going to keep going here. And then I'm going to talk just a little bit about business. We actually get hired by companies to sometimes help them figure out how to do this. And what I get asked by CEOs a lot, especially sort of old school CEOs, is they say, is this business for good stuff just a fad? Like, this is going to pass, right? Because it's kind of distracting me from, making money. And my answer more recently is no. I mean, I don't think it's just a feel-good fad. I think we're fundamentally seeing the transformation of how business is done in our economy. I think at a minimum, and maybe over the last 5 years, it's been a license for doing business, right? At least a check box. Well, do you have a give back program? Do you let your employees volunteer on company time? Do you have a nonprofit partner? Are you a United Way participating agency? But it's really kind of the evolution of corporate social responsibility. But I think we're moving to where it's becoming more and more of a competitive advantage. And as consumers, we get to drive that. I had a choice recently. We were selling our house to go with a traditional real estate company or this one over here that was kind of strange called Give Realty. And Lori's a social entrepreneur, started Give Realty as a for-profit social venture that said, I'm going to take 25% of my commission off the top, no hidden numbers, of what you would pay me as the seller or as the buyer of a home, and I'm going to give it back to you. And all you have to do is show me that you've donated it to a charity. 25%. So she immediately reduced her company's profitability off the top line, to 75% of what it could be. And so, that was an easy choice for me to choose who to sell my house through because it didn't cost me any money. I got to give away 25% of what I would have paid her. I get the tax deduction, right? And she's killing it. She's got 10 people working for her now. I've lost track. In a couple years, they've helped catalyze almost $1 million in philanthropy, like that would have gone to her pocket. That's so it's it's increasingly a competitive advantage, and I think soon it might just be the way that we do business. I don't know, and I'm a business guy. And that when I was in business school, that wasn't even a sparkle or twinkle in anyone's eyes. I was taught companies will maximize profit. Period. End of sentence, right? And I don't know that that's always the case. In fact, there's been some great studies. I don't know if you guys read Stanford's Social Innovation Review, but they actually looked at companies, and there was a research study that looked at corporate sort of giving and community engagement and what impact that actually has on profitability of that company, right, and financial performance of that company. And they found that how companies give has a bigger effect on their financial performance as a company than how much they give. So it's not always about writing bigger checks. It's about how you go about doing it. The Give Realty example, empowering your customer to give the money away. And the impact on innovative giving, the how, was 2.8 times as large as the impact on generous giving. So thoughtful, creative, employee-engaged, customer-engaged giving is something that I think is going to be the new way to do business, right? So if any of you are in business or thinking about it, that's happening. This idea of a social impact business. So on the left side of that continuum, there are so many of these in Austin. And I suspect there are more and more of them here. And I think it's great. I think it's great that they've become sort of our brethren in the nonprofit sector. Aunt Bertha is this amazing for-profit organization that's transforming how human services are delivered. They're an online platform for people that you all serve to get access to the information they need to get human services. They've got incredible mapping tools. They partner with nonprofit agencies for case management, and they've got millions of dollars in funding from Wall Street, right, to do this. It's fascinating. Go look them up if you're interested in that. There's another nonprofit organization in Austin that I would call a social venture. They're on the right side. I don't have a slide on it, called College Forward. They work with first-generation college students who likely would otherwise not have an opportunity to go to college and probably wouldn't succeed in college. They use AmeriCorps Vistas in an innovative mentoring model, and they have phenomenal results in helping see kids that wouldn't normally make it in college actually succeed. And one of the things that they did is they had to develop some proprietary software to help do the detailed level of case management and tracking that they needed. And they started going to conferences around the country in this subsector and talking to just, people say, well, how do you do that? How do you track that many students and all the volunteers and their outcomes over 4, 5, 6 years? And so they started talking about their software, and they realized that there was a market for their software amongst other similar programs across the country. So they're now selling their software that they developed as a nonprofit to other organizations. They're in the process of raising $200,000 in loans, not philanthropy, loans as a nonprofit to finance the upstart of this new vision. And they're going to be able to pay that back. They're going to make so much money selling their software across the country. It's just a little nonprofit in Austin that they're going to be able to pay back $200,000 in loans and have profit that will fuel their mission. Look up College Forward if you're interested in that. So here's my bold prediction about this blurring of sector lines. And please don't take this the wrong way. I'm a nonprofit guy. My wife's a nonprofit gal. I've never loved the word. Right? Where else in our economy do we label ourselves by what we're not as opposed to what we are? And it's not even accurate, right? If you define profit, at least the way I was taught in business school, profit is simply the excess of revenues over expenses. So, I mean, if at some point you're not making profit in your organization, you're not going to be an organization for very long, right? So it's not even true. If anything, technically we should be called the non-distribution of profit sector, but that's even uglier. But I think more fundamentally, we're not going to be calling this the nonprofit sector much longer. This is my prediction. Maybe, 10 years, 5 years, 2 years? And is that a bad thing, right? Do we just need to, go back to that just sort of erase this line? Do we care? I know the IRS does, but I don't really care a lot about what the IRS thinks. How open are we going to be to this blurring as a sector? Or are we going to be nonprofit? We are nonprofit, and if you're on the other side or you do things differently, then there's no room for you. I don't know that that's the right way to think about it. So take 1 minute. Turn to your neighbor. If you could change it tomorrow, what would you call this sector? 1 minute. If you could change it tomorrow, what would you call it? Okay, time's up. Let me have your attention back here. Raise your hand if you think you have it. Who's got the name? I'm going to write it down. Okay, right here. Profits for Good. The Profits for Good sector. I like it. All right. Was there another one? She's calling on you. The impact sector. That's one I hear a lot. I like the impact sector. What else? How else would we describe ourselves? The impact sector. The feel-good spending sector. All right. We'll help you spend for good, right? I like that. Social good sector. Socially invested sector. Social reinvestment sector. I should be writing these down. Somebody write these down. These are good. You guys might actually help change. The community impact sector, right. Social enterprise sector. Impact enterprise. You guys are smart. I love this. I hear a lot. We talk about the mission-driven sector, right? All these whether you're a company or a nonprofit or a hybrid, you have you're mission-driven as opposed to profit-driven. Well, we'll see. Invite me back, Laura. 10 years from now, I'll come back and we'll see if this prediction is true. And gosh, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time that we actually take ownership of what. I believe words mean things fundamentally, and so maybe we get to help set the stage. So we've got these blurring of sector lines. Our sector is changing. I think we should embrace it, not run away from it. And I have some ideas for how we do that. And what's helping is this idea, the second big bucket I want to talk about is this kind of significant mission-driven wealth emerging in our community. So here's the problem. It's a study we did. 38% of nonprofits report that their overall health financially is strong. Only 38%. Are you one of those, or are you in the 62%? 14% of nonprofits report that their funding is highly diversified. Probably have similar problems here. Money is a challenge. So here's the good and the bad of philanthropy. This is just out data from Giving USA. If you don't subscribe to their stuff, I'd encourage it. The beautiful thing is that in America, we give away $1 billion a day to charity in our country, right? About more than $1 billion, $373 billion total in 2015. Now that's all over the world, right? So a lot of that goes overseas to the developing world, but most of it stays here. 71% of it comes from individuals like you and me. Most people think that most philanthropy comes from Bill and Melinda and Michael and Susan, and the Waltons, all of that, or from big companies. Ain't true. 71% comes from people like you and me swiping a card and writing a check, right? The challenge is that total giving as a percentage of GDP hovers somewhere in the 1 to 2% range every year, no matter what, and it has for the entire history of our country. So those of you that tithe or even know what the word tithe means, that for whatever reason that's not catching on, has never caught on in our country, and these dollars include faith-based giving, but it always hovers around 1 to 2% of our total economy. That's what GDP is, our total economy, right? And 50% of giving comes from only 5.6% of our population. So philanthropy is wonderful. It's a beautiful thing. It's the core, I think, of what makes us work as a sector, right? And we need more of it. It's not bad. We need more. We need United Way. We need organizations like yours that are advocating for more and more philanthropy. But I'm here to tell you, if you set your vision and your goal, your moonshot at actually solving the problems in our communities, it's not going to be enough. It's never been enough. Government dollars, in parallel have been primarily dropping. You can argue, depending on your politics, whether that's a good or a bad thing, but it's happening. Government resources are decreasing. So what do we do? Well, we turn to this new source, I think, and some people call it impact investing. This is from a research group called Arabella. So if you look at philanthropy, plus or minus, $300 billion or so, it was $370 last year. I talk to people of means a lot, and they tell me they think about their wealth in sort of three buckets. We do philanthropy over here. Okay, we give to charities and causes that we're really passionate about, but that's a relatively small group, of things that we'll give to. We give to our children's school. We give to Coleman because my mom died of breast cancer. Whatever it might be, we do philanthropy. And then we have our safe money over here, retirement. House is paid off, kids are taken care of, right? We've got that money over here, but I've got this middle bucket of money that I'm using to invest in new businesses or I'm putting to work on Wall Street. But increasingly, mission-driven people of wealth want to see ways to put that middle bucket of money to work for good. We refer to it as impact investing in some ways, and Arabella estimates that within about 5 or 10 years that's going to be another $600 billion in our economy that's going to be unlocked and that's sort of pent up and waiting to find a home for good. It's probably not going to happen by people giving it away and writing checks, but can we find ways to infuse that capital into our sector in a way that doubles can you imagine what that would mean? Doubling the amount of resources available to us as a sector. What would we be able to do with that? We'd probably be able to solve some problems at scale if we could tap that capital, right? The challenge that I hear from these people, and I heard it earlier this week in a meeting, is there are not enough financial vehicles and business models for me to invest in the social sector. And I think that's why you're seeing for-profit companies start up that have a social impact mind, because they're starting up on the for-profit side of the line because it's easier for them to offer equity in their company or to get loans, right? But there's nothing that says we can't do that in the nonprofit sector too. There are no IRS rules, there are no laws that say that in the nonprofit sector we can't make our business models such that they're attractive to this kind of capital. So what does this mean for us? One of my board members is passionate about this. She says that nonprofits almost have a moral obligation. That if this is the case, if philanthropy is always only about 1 or 2% of GDP, and there's all this new wealth that wants to come into play, if you're a nonprofit that has in any way the ability to earn revenue in a missional way, or to create a business model that's attractive to this kind of money as opposed to this kind of money, that you have a moral obligation to leave this money alone so that the organizations on the far left side of this continuum, who will probably only ever be reliant on charity, they get to keep the philanthropy. And the rest of us who can move further down the continuum must morally find ways to create within our organizations the business models and the vehicles to attract this other kind of money. Do you buy that? Have you thought about that in your nonprofit? When names like J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs get into impact investing, we probably should start to pay attention. This is real, right? This is real, and it's happening in our communities. $4 billion just flowing through Goldman Sachs since 2001 in impact investment capital, loans, equity investments, other than philanthropy, but looking to do good while also making a little bit of money. Great Skull Forum article. There's a central theme underpinning the potential of impact investing, and that's that the creation of economic value and social value are not necessarily mutually exclusive, right? No longer can we sit over here in the nonprofit sector and say, all that financing and that Wall Street stuff and that business stuff, that's bad, that's evil, we don't want to have anything to do with that. And no longer can those in the business world look down on the nonprofit sector and say they're inefficient, they don't know how to run a business, we can't invest in them the way we would invest in a business, right? Both of those points of view, I think, are being invalidated and must change. That this amount of mission-driven wealth that's about to flow into our economy is a big driver of it. So the third big point is, we have new vehicles. And I'm going to show you some examples of organizations and models that you might consider for tapping into this new paradigm. How do you think about innovating your business model in a way that doesn't sacrifice your mission, right? But is able to do more with more. Social impact loans, earned revenue sliding fee scale models, pay for success. Anybody heard of pay for success, social impact bonds? One person? Good. I can tell you a little bit about those. Those have a potential to totally transform how we do social service, particularly in prevention circles. Program-related investments, those are kind of old school foundations that are making loans, either zero interest or low interest loans rather than or in addition to grants. And then this idea of kind of fast pitches, incubators, accelerators. I'll hit a couple of those. So I'm going to move quickly. Social impact loans. A funder or an investor chooses to put money, maybe through an intermediary, maybe directly to a nonprofit social venture that provides services that earn some sort of profit. Okay? College Forward selling their software. Easter Seals went through our accelerator 2 years ago. Easter Seals, do you have an Easter Seals here in Chattanooga? No? Maybe at the state level. Easter Seals serves adults with disabilities, helps them with life skills and job skills training. And what they found was they'd serve these individuals for a couple of years. A lot of them are have developmental disabilities. They may be ex-cons, and help, but they had trouble keeping jobs. They'd leave their services and they'd have trouble keeping jobs. And they said, how about if we employed them? There are 9,000 adults with disabilities in Austin who are employable and unemployed. 9,000. And they said, we can fix that. And entrepreneurs running their organization came to our accelerator, said, these folks, mostly men, they may not be able to work at Dell Computer Company, but they can mow lawns, right? So they started Easter Seals Lawn and Landscape. They started a residential lawn and landscape business, a for-profit company, subsidiary of the nonprofit, to employ their adults with disabilities, right? It's fulfilling a missional purpose, and they're making money. I pay them $50 every 2 weeks to mow and edge my yard. I could probably pay the kid down the street $40, but I'd rather pay Easter Seals $50, knowing that it's given a job to an adult who's trying to get back on their feet and get it. And how did they do that? They got a loan. They said, boy, to start this up, we need $50,000 to buy a truck and our first set of lawnmowers. And their first reaction was, all right, well, where do we hold the fundraiser? You know, whose house is going to, what luncheon, what race, golf tournament, we need $50,000, right? And we shook them and said, no, this is a business. You can finance this. You have a business model. You can make a profit. People will pay you $50 instead of $35 because of who you are. And so I went out to 5 wealthy friends and said, can each of you make a $10,000 loan at 2%? You'll earn 2% return on your investment, right? Because they're going to make a profit. They had a 3-year break-even plan. They launched the business and it broke even in 3 months. Okay, that's what debt. We all hate debt, right? But that's what debt, creatively used and well used in a nonprofit organization, can do to transform people's lives. Hundreds of people have been employed by Easter Seals Lawn and Landscapes. Mission Capital is an earned revenue sliding fee scale model. I won't go into Mother's Milk Bank, but more and more businesses are starting. So this is an eye chart. Pay for success, or the use of social impact bonds, is a model that I think can fundamentally transform our sector. And it's the idea that that if I want to scale a program as a nonprofit organization, I have difficulties achieving that scale because I often have to fundraise to do it, and I have to do it sort of on spec. But if I have something that I know works, let's call it an innovative teenage pregnancy prevention program model, right? And I've been able to prove it out over 5 years with 200 young women. But for me to try to tackle the 2,000 young women that actually need the service, I either have to go beg the government for more money that's probably not there, or I have to try to raise it. Pay for Success says we can provide private capital, investment capital, to be the upfront money you need to go scale that, because you've shown us that if you can prevent 200 girls from getting pregnant, you're actually providing economic value to our community. Yes, you're changing the lives of those young girls, but you're also providing economic value to the community, because those girls will be in school instead of being at home, possibly. And that school gets money for the head count that they have every morning when they do their head count. And there's savings to the public health system from having to deal with low birth weight babies and the difficulties that often emerge with teenage pregnancies. And so if you start to calculate the value, the economic value of that, you realize that the cost it might take to scale that program is significantly less than the total money saved by a government entity or by a healthcare entity. And if you can convince that government entity or healthcare entity not to pay up front for those services, but to say, okay, if private investor X, gives the loan for $1 million to that nonprofit to be able to grow it, they're not going to earn a revenue providing services to teenage girls, but they're going to save money for our healthcare district, for our school district. And if that happens, then we as the government will pay back that private investor, maybe with a little bit of interest, because there will be so much value created in the savings of prevention. So that's the model. It's complicated, and I probably need more like 15 minutes to describe to you. But we've got 4 of these working their way through Austin right now. Big collaborative things that I think are going to change the way we think about financing prevention in our sector. I won't talk about social venture partners too much. We are the social venture partners chapter of 40 chapters across the world. These are individual investor philanthropists who want to do philanthropy differently, and they want to give their time and their energy and their talent. We're fortunate to have 110 of them who help staff our accelerator and who are pouring their money and their time and their talent into the nonprofit sector in new ways. I'd love to see an SVP chapter get started here in Chattanooga if that's something that you're interested in. I know the people you could talk to do that. It's transforming the way that people with means engage in innovative ways in our community with their financial capital and their human capital. We run an accelerator at Mission Capital. We believe that our most promising social entrepreneurs deserve the same access to human and financial capital that our business entrepreneurs get every day. You hear about accelerators. In fact, I think there's one in this building for tech companies and for-profit ventures. We think that nonprofit entrepreneurs, nonprofit ventures deserve the same thing, and we do so through this really cool accelerator program. We're in the middle of it right now. I was actually in a class yesterday with 5 nonprofit social entrepreneurs who are pursuing sort of earned revenue and creative business models, and we're going to accelerate them. We've helped them raise $3.2 million, 9 organizations over the last 2 years through our accelerator. We kick it off with a cool event called Philanthropitch. This is sort of Shark Tank for nonprofits. That's how you get into the accelerator, and we give a bunch of money away. It's more like Dolphin Tank. It's not really Shark Tank. It's a kinder, gentler version of Shark Tank. They get up on stage, they pitch their ideas. We have an audience of 400 to 600 people and judges. We give away $150,000, $140,000 that night, and then we pick 5 of those organizations to go through our accelerator. Philanthropitch is expanding to Atlanta and other cities, so keep your eye out for that to expand. We're a core partner of theirs. So I've run out of time, Laura. I've got a couple more slides that I'm gonna not show, but I'll stop for a minute. And you tell me if we have time for any other questions or things, or if we need to pause, because I know I stand between you and lunch. But okay, I know we need to walk over there. If there's one, let me just leave you with this final thought. Remember what I asked you at the beginning here. What is it that you want to see solved? Right? Go home with that in your heart, and go home with the knowledge and the understanding that it's actually possible, more possible now than it ever has been as a sector. How is it going to be possible? It's going to probably require you to change, and your organization to change, and to take some risks, and to bring new people into the fold, and bring new money into the fold, and think maybe a little bit more with a business mindset. But it's absolutely possible. And I'm thrilled to get to deliver that message today. If I can ever be of help to any of you, informally or formally, Laura knows how to get a hold of me or my team. We're happy to help point you to resources or ideas or direction or other examples that we're seeing in Austin and across the country. So is there one or two sort of questions or other things that were unclear that I kind of went through too fast that I can answer? Yes, ma'am. Can we open an office here? It'd be fun. I'd be thrilled to help somebody here, get something like that, or share. I mean, as a nonprofit, we can give away everything we have, and I'm happy to. So, be more than happy to help with that, ma'am. Yeah, I'll be here at lunch too. So if we can talk some more there, if anybody wants to grab me and go deeper on any of these issues. I'm kind of partial to mission-driven sector. Yeah, I like the concept of being mission-driven as a person. I think it distinguishes us, me from another person, and my organization from other organizations. But I like some of your ideas too. There were some good ones. I like impact. I like the idea of social impact. Yeah, maybe some rebranding. Right. The United Way's Center for Mission-Driven Organizations. We can get that done. Leslie, can we do that? Can we do that? Yeah. Good. Well, thank you guys very, very much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for letting me be here.
Thank you, Matt. Well, as I said, that concludes our morning at the Edney. So now what we'd like everybody to do is to walk across the street to the library. Lunch is going to be on the 4th floor. How many of you have been on the 4th floor of the library? That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, exactly. Lots of cool stuff up there, and they're looking forward to hosting us. We have made decisions about venues, and we'll announce them over at lunch as far as the breakouts. So head on over. Yes, please take everything with you. There will be one breakout that's going to be here in the conference room this afternoon, but please take all your belongings with you. Thank you.